The station was called Iron Mercy, but there was no mercy in its lower levels. Deep below the clean halls and bright command rooms, the air was cold and heavy. Lights flickered often. Metal walls were scratched with marks left by prisoners who had long given up hope. This was where dangerous aliens were kept. This was where humans locked away the things they feared. Elias Verne walked slowly through the corridor, holding a small tool case in one hand. He was not a soldier. He did not carry a weapon. He was only a maintenance technician, assigned to repair power lines and broken doors. He had worked on Iron Mercy for 3 years, always staying away from trouble, always keeping his head down. Today, his work order led him somewhere new. Cell Block Z. As he passed the warning signs, his steps slowed. Restricted area. Someone had to fix it. 2 armed guards stood at the entrance to the block. They looked bored, but their hands rested close to their weapons. One of them glanced at Elias. "Maintenance?" "Yes, sir," Elias said quietly. The guard scanned his pad, then nodded. "You're clear. Don't talk, don't look too long, and whatever you hear, ignore it." "Hear what?" Elias asked before he could stop himself. The guard's mouth twisted into a grim smile. "The monster." The door slid open with a deep mechanical sound. Elias stepped inside. The corridor beyond was darker than the others. The lights were dimmed to save power or maybe to hide what was kept here. The air smelled old, like metal and something else, something dry and sharp. As Elias walked, he began to hear sounds. Low breaths, slow, heavy, not angry. Not wild, just tired. He reached the faulty power panel at the end of the corridor. It was placed beside a massive reinforced door, covered in warning symbols written in several languages, human and alien alike. This was her cell. Elias tried not to look at the door, but his eyes were pulled toward it. A narrow observation window sat at eye level, protected by thick transparent alloy. Inside, the cell was almost empty. No furniture, no bed, no lights except a faint glow from the ceiling. And in the center of the room, chained to the floor, was the alien woman. Elias froze. She was larger than a human, tall even while sitting on the cold metal floor. Her skin was a pale silver gray, dull and cracked in places. Long dark markings ran along her arms and neck like faded scars or natural patterns. Her hair, or what passed for hair, hung in thick strands down her back, matted and lifeless. Her arms were thin, too thin. Her ribs showed clearly beneath her skin. Her shoulders were slumped forward, her head bowed. Heavy restraint bands wrapped around her wrists, ankles, and waist, locking her in place. This was the monster. She lifted her head slightly, as if sensing him. Elias sucked in a sharp breath. Her eyes were large and dark, reflecting the weak light. They did not glow. They did not burn with rage. They looked empty, hungry. She stared at him through the window, her lips parted but no sound came out. Elias felt something twist painfully in his chest. He had heard stories. Everyone on the station had. They said this alien had slaughtered entire crews, that she tore through steel doors with her bare hands, that she could not be killed, only contained. But the being in front of him looked like she might collapse if she tried to stand. A sharp voice cut through the moment. "Hey, don't stare." Elias jumped and turned. One of the guards from earlier had followed him down the corridor. "Just fixing the panel," Elias said quickly, kneeling beside it. "Good," the guard said. "Fix it fast. She doesn't like being watched." Elias glanced back at the window despite himself. The alien woman had not moved. Her eyes were still locked on him. "She doesn't look dangerous," Elias said softly. The guard snorted. "That's how she tricks you." "Has she attacked anyone?" Elias asked. The guard hesitated just for a second. "No," he said shortly, "and don't ask questions." Elias finished the repair in silence. The power panel hummed back to life. The lights in the corridor grew slightly brighter. As he stood, he noticed something near his foot. A food tray, empty, scratched clean. "How often is she fed?" Elias asked before he could stop himself. The guard's eyes narrowed. "Enough." Elias looked at the tray again. then at the alien woman. Her gaze dropped slowly to the floor, as if the effort of holding it had been too much. Enough did not look like this. Elias returned to his quarters later, but he could not sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her. The thin arms, the hollow eyes, the way she had looked at him not with hate but with something close to hope. On his small table sat his dinner: protein paste, nutrient bread, a cup of water. Standard station food, not good but filling. Elias stared at it for a long time. Then he made a decision. The next day he took a different route to work. He stopped by the food dispensary and requested an extra ration, claiming a double shift. No one questioned it. No one ever paid much attention to maintenance workers. He wrapped the food carefully and hid it in his tool case. His heart pounded as he entered cell block Z again. The same guards stood watch. The same warnings glowed on the walls. "Back again," one guard muttered. "Panels unstable," Elias said. "Needs a second check." The guards waved him through. Inside the corridor, Elias walked faster this time. His hands were shaking slightly. He stopped in front of her cell. She was in the same position as before, sitting, chained, waiting. When she saw him, her head lifted faster than before. Her eyes widened. Elias knelt and opened his tool case. He pulled out the food. Her breath hitched. Slowly, carefully, Elias approached the cell door's lower access slot. It was used for remote item transfer. Normally, it stayed sealed. He tapped a code into the panel. The slot opened with a soft hiss. Elias slid the food tray inside. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the alien woman moved. She crawled forward, movement stiff and cautious, like someone afraid the ground might vanish beneath them. She stopped just short of the tray, staring at it as if it might disappear. Elias held his breath. She reached out with trembling fingers and touched the food. It was real. She pulled it close and began to eat, not fast, not wild. She ate slowly, carefully, as if afraid it would be taken away. As she ate, her shoulders began to shake. A soft sound escaped her throat, crying. Elias felt his eyes burn. "You're okay," he whispered, even though he knew she might not understand. "No one's taking it." She looked up at him. Her eyes were wet now, shining in the dim light. She finished the food and then, to Elias' surprise, she stood. It was difficult. Her legs trembled under her weight, but she stood and stepped closer to the window. She raised one hand. Slowly, gently, she pressed it against the transparent barrier. Elias stood without thinking and placed his hand against the same spot. Their palms aligned, separated only by the thick wall. She leaned forward. Her lips touched the barrier where his hand rested. A kiss. Soft. Careful, full of emotion Elias could not name. His breath caught in his throat. Footsteps echoed in the corridor. Elias pulled his hand back quickly and stepped away from the door just as a guard rounded the corner. "Everything done?" the guard asked. "Yes," Elias said, his voice unsteady. "All fixed." He walked away without looking back. But he could still feel the warmth of that kiss burning through the metal, through the fear, through everything he thought he knew. Behind the reinforced door, the monster watched him leave. And for the first time in a very long time, she did not feel alone. Elias did not sleep that night. He lay on his narrow bunk, staring at the metal ceiling of his quarters while the station hummed softly around him. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face, not the rumors, not the word monster, just the alien woman's eyes filled with shock and relief and the gentle way she had pressed her lips to the barrier. It had been a mistake, a dangerous one, and yet when morning came he did not regret it. At work, Elias kept his head down. He fixed panels, checked conduits, and nodded silently when spoken to. But his mind kept drifting back to cell block Z. He wondered if she was still hungry, if she was stronger, if the guards had noticed anything strange. At midday, he passed two soldiers talking near a junction. "She's changing," one of them said. "Yeah," the other replied. "Medical scans show her vitals improved overnight." "That's bad," the first soldier muttered. "Means starvation isn't working fast enough." Elias' chest tightened. That night he made another choice. This time he brought more food, not just basic rations. He took nutrient packs meant for injured crew members. They were richer, stronger, enough to help someone recover. Getting into cell block Z was harder now. Security had increased. More guards, more scans. When Elias reached the checkpoint, a guard frowned at his wrist pad. "Maintenance again?" the guard asked. "Yes," Elias replied, forcing his voice to stay calm. "Power readings are unstable." The guard studied him for a moment, then waved him through. "Be quick." Elias walked fast, his heart pounding. The corridor felt colder than before. When he reached her cell, she was already standing, not chained to the floor this time. The restraints were still there, but loosened slightly, allowing limited movement. She stood near the window, her posture straighter than before. She saw him and froze. Then she smiled. It was small, weak, but it was real. Elias' breath caught. He knelt and opened the transfer slot again. He slid the food inside. She did not hesitate this time. She took it and sat down, eating more confidently, though still slowly. As she ate, she watched him closely, studying his face like she was memorizing it. When she finished, she spoke. The sound startled him. Her voice was low and rough, like it had not been used in a long time. "Elias, his name. You know my name," he whispered. She nodded. "Guards say it." She hesitated, then added, "You kind." Elias felt something warm spread through his chest. "You can talk," he said. "Little," she replied. "Learning." She stepped closer to the window. Up close, Elias could see more details. Fine lines around her eyes, old scars along her arms, signs of pain that went far beyond this cell. "What's your name?" Elias asked. She paused, then placed a hand over her chest. "Salith." "It's nice to meet you, Salith," Elias said. Her eyes softened at the sound of her name. From that day on, Elias kept coming, sometimes daily, sometimes every other day, always carefully, always quietly. He brought food, water. Once, a thin blanket he had stolen from storage. Salith accepted each gift with visible emotion. She never begged, never demanded. She always thanked him. As days passed, she grew stronger. Her movements became smoother, her voice clearer. She learned human words quickly. One day, Elias asked the question that had been haunting him. "Why do they call you a monster?" Salith was silent for a long time. Then she said, "Because they were afraid." "Of what?" Elias asked. "Of what I am," she replied. "Of what my people are." She sat down slowly, her back against the wall. "My kind are called the Varethi," she said. "We are protectors. Born strong, born to shield others." "Then why were you captured?" Elias asked. Salith's hands curled into fists. "War," she said. "Humans came, other aliens came. They fought near our worlds. Refugees ran, I stood in front of them." "You defended them," Elias said. "Yes," Salith replied. "I did not attack first, but I did not fall." She looked up at him. Humans saw only strength, not reason. Elias felt anger rise in his chest. "They starved you," he said quietly. "Why?" Salith's gaze dropped. "My people change when abused," she said. "Pain, hunger, fear, it breaks something inside us." "What happens?" Elias asked. She met his eyes. "We become what they expect." Elias went cold. "So starving you was dangerous," he said. "Yes," Salith replied. "Very." One evening, alarms blared through the station. Red lights flashed. Emergency doors slammed shut. Elias was halfway to cell block Z when the station shook violently. An explosion echoed through the metal halls. He grabbed onto a railing as the floor trembled beneath his feet. Over the intercom, a panicked voice shouted, "Unauthorized vessels detected. Station under attack." Elias' first thought was not of safety. It was of Salith. He ran. Guards flooded the corridors, shouting orders. Smoke filled the air. Systems flickered. When Elias reached the block, chaos had already begun. Some cells were open. Prisoners shouted in alien languages. Weapons fire echoed. He reached Salith's cell and froze. The door was still sealed. Inside, Salith stood calmly, watching the chaos beyond the window. When she saw Elias, her eyes widened. "You must leave," she said urgently. I'm not leaving you, Elias replied. She stepped closer to the barrier. They will kill me if they lose control, she said. Or worse. Elias looked at the control panel beside the door. An impossible choice stood before him: unlock her cell and risk everything, or walk away and let fear decide her fate. The station shook again. Elias placed his hand on the panel. I trust you, he said. Salith's breath caught. Elias, she said softly. If you do this, there is no return. He met her gaze. I already crossed that line when I fed you, he replied. He entered the code. The restraints disengaged. The door began to open. As it slid aside, Salith stepped forward, her full height revealed. Even weak, she was powerful, tall, strong, radiating something Elias could feel deep in his bones. She did not attack him, she did not roar, she bowed her head slightly. Thank you, she said. Before Elias could respond, a blast rocked the corridor. Armed attackers appeared at the far end, alien mercenaries firing wildly. Salith moved. She stepped in front of Elias, raising her arms. A shimmering field of energy flared around her, invisible yet undeniable. Shots slammed into it and vanished. The mercenaries froze in shock. Salith's voice echoed, calm and commanding. Enough, they fled. Elias stared at her, stunned. You protected me, he whispered. She turned to him, eyes fierce and gentle at once. You fed me, she replied. You saw me. More alarms sounded. Footsteps approached. Salith looked toward the escape corridors. This station will fall, she said. You must choose. Elias swallowed. For the first time in his life, he did not choose safety. He chose humanity. The corridor shook as another explosion echoed through the station. Metal groaned like something alive and wounded. Emergency lights painted everything in red. Salith stood between Elias and the chaos, her body tense but controlled. The energy around her had faded, but he could still feel it, like heat after a fire. We have little time, she said. Guards were shouting nearby. Some were running toward the attack. Others were retreating in fear. The station's systems were failing one by one. Elias looked at the open cell behind her, then down the corridor ahead. Where do we go? He asked. Salith tilted her head slightly, listening not with ears alone but with something deeper. Toward the center, she said, where fear is strongest. That's where command is, Elias replied, and weapons. Yes, Salith said, that is where I am needed. They moved together. As they ran, Elias noticed how Salith moved differently now. Her steps were steady. Her posture was strong. The food, the care, the simple kindness, it had awakened something inside her. They turned a corner and nearly collided with a squad of human soldiers. Stop, one of them shouted, raising his rifle. Elias stepped forward without thinking. Wait, she's not. Salith raised one hand slowly. The soldiers froze, not because of force, because of what they saw. She stood tall, unchained, her eyes clear and focused. No rage. No hunger, just calm strength. I will not harm you, Salith said, her voice carrying easily over the alarms. I am here to protect. The soldiers exchanged uncertain looks. She's the monster, one whispered. Level Omega. Elias turned on them, his fear breaking into anger. She saved my life. She's been saving lives. Before anyone could respond, the station shook violently again. A section of the ceiling collapsed further down the corridor, crushing a fleeing technician beneath twisted metal. Without hesitation, Salith moved. She crossed the distance in seconds, lifting the heavy debris as if it weighed nothing. She knelt, careful, gentle, and pulled the trapped human free. The technician stared at her in disbelief. Easy, Salith said softly. You are safe. The soldiers lowered their weapons. One of them swallowed hard. Command needs to see this. They escorted Salith and Elias toward the central command deck. Along the way, chaos reigned. Fires burned. Doors were jammed. Prisoners and crew alike were trapped in damaged sections. Each time, Salith stopped. She shielded groups from falling debris. She sealed hull breaches with shimmering energy fields. She carried the injured with care that made Elias' chest ache. Word spread fast. The monster is helping us. No, she's protecting us. By the time they reached command, dozens of lives had been saved. Inside the command chamber, officers shouted over each other. Tactical displays showed hostile ships surrounding the station. Defense systems were failing. When Salith entered, silence fell. The station commander, a stern woman with tired eyes, stared at her. "This is the prisoner?" she asked. "Yes," Elias said firmly. "Her name is Salith." Salith stepped forward. "Your station is under attack by scavenger fleets," she said. "They believe you are weak." "We are," an officer snapped. "Our shields are gone," Salith nodded. "Then let me stand." The commander hesitated. "Why should we trust you?" Salith looked around the room, meeting each human gaze. "Because you starved me and still I protected you. Because one human showed me kindness and I chose to return it." She turned slightly and looked at Elias. "He reminded me who I am." The commander exhaled slowly. "What are you?" Salith straightened. "I am Varethi. My people are guardians. We grow strong through care, through bonds. Pain twists us. Hunger breaks us." Realization spread across the room like a quiet shock. "All this time," the commander said softly, "we thought starving you made us safe." "It nearly made me dangerous," Salith replied. "And it will do the same to others like me." The station shuddered again. A warning blared, main hull breach imminent. "Can you help us?" the commander asked. Salith nodded once. "Yes, but not alone." She placed her hands on the floor. Energy flowed outward, spreading through the station's structure like veins of light. Systems flickered, then stabilized. Shields reformed, thin but growing stronger. Outside, enemy fire struck the renewed barrier and failed. Cheers erupted across the command deck. Salith swayed. Elias rushed to her side. "You're pushing yourself too hard." "I will hold," she said, though her voice trembled. "But my people are not meant to stand alone." "What do you mean?" the commander asked. Salith looked up. "There are others of my kind in your prisons, starving, afraid." Silence filled the room again. "If you release them," Salith continued, "feed them, treat them as living beings, we will defend this station, not as weapons, as allies." The commander closed her eyes briefly. Then she gave the order. Across Iron Mercy, containment protocols were lifted, transfer slots opened, food dispensers activated. For the first time, the prisoners were fed without fear. Something changed. Elias felt it even before he saw it. A shift in the air. A warmth spreading. Other Varethi emerged from their cells, weak at first, then stronger as nourishment reached them. They did not attack. They joined Salith, forming a network of living shields and power. Outside, the scavenger fleets faltered. Their weapons failed against the growing defenses. Panic replaced confidence. Within minutes, they retreated. The station survived. Afterward, med teams flooded the halls. Repairs began. Survivors were counted. Salith finally collapsed to her knees. Elias caught her before she fell. "You did it," he whispered. "We did it," she replied faintly. Later, in a quiet medical bay, Salith rested on a reinforced bed. Nutrient lines fed into her arms. Her color slowly returned. The commander stood at the foot of the bed. "You saved this station," she said, "and you showed us our greatest failure." She turned to Elias. "You broke protocol." "Yes," Elias said, "I did." "You will face consequences," the commander continued. Elias nodded. "I understand." The commander paused. "Those consequences will not be punishment." Elias looked up, surprised. "Without you," she said, "Iron Mercy would be a graveyard." She left them alone. Salith opened her eyes and looked at Elias. "You chose me," she said quietly. "I chose what was right," Elias replied. She reached for his hand. Her touch was warm, steady. "My people will remember this," she said. "And so will I." Elias squeezed her hand gently. Outside the medical bay, the station lights burned bright again. And the word monster began to lose its meaning. The station did not return to normal after the battle. It changed. Iron Mercy was quieter now, but not peaceful. Repair crews worked day and night. Walls were replaced. Burn marks were cleaned. But something deeper had shifted, something no machine could fix. Fear had cracked. Salith remained in the medical bay for several days. Her body recovered faster than human doctors expected, but they still insisted she rest. Nutrients flowed steadily. Her skin slowly regained its healthy silver tone. The hollow look in her eyes faded. Elias visited whenever he could. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they sat in silence. Other times they were not alone. Scientists came, careful and nervous. Diplomats arrived from nearby human systems. Military officers watched from a distance, their expressions guarded. Everyone wanted answers. What exactly are the Varethi? She never reacted with anger. She answered calmly, honestly. We are not tools, she said more than once. We are not weapons. We are people who were shaped to protect others. When you treat us as less than that, you create the danger you fear. Some listened. Some did not. News spread quickly beyond the station. Footage of Salith shielding humans, lifting wreckage, and standing calmly in command had leaked. Across human space, reactions were divided. Some called her a hero, others called her a threat. On Iron Mercy, the prisoners were no longer prisoners, at least not all of them. The Varethi were moved from containment to guarded habitation decks. They were fed properly. Medical care was given. Human staff watched closely, waiting for violence. It never came. The Varethi helped instead. They assisted repairs. They reinforced weakened structures. They stood at the station's edges, silent and watchful. Trust grew slowly, carefully. Not everyone approved. A week after the attack, Elias was summoned to command. He knew what it meant. The chamber was full when he arrived. Officers, legal officials, observers from Earth Command. Cameras hovered silently. Salith stood beside him, unrestrained. That alone caused whispers. The commander spoke first. Elias Verne, you are charged with severe violations of station protocol, unauthorized contact, smuggling supplies, releasing a level Omega captive. Elias straightened. I know. Your actions endangered this station, she continued. Yes, Elias said. They also saved it. Murmurs rippled through the room. The commander raised a hand for silence. This hearing is not about denying facts. It is about responsibility. She turned to Salith. You may speak. Salith stepped forward. Her presence filled the room without force. I was starved, she said simply. I was called a monster. I was treated as less than alive. She looked directly at the observers. Elias fed me. That was his crime. Silence followed. He reminded me who I was, Salith continued. If he had not acted, I would have broken. And when Varethi break, we do not stop. A shiver ran through the room. You feared me, she said. Your fear was not wrong, but it was incomplete. One of the Earth Command officials spoke. You admit you are dangerous. Salith nodded. So are you. Yet you do not starve your children to keep them weak. The words landed hard. The commander leaned forward. Elias Verne, do you regret your actions? Elias looked around the room, then at Salith. No, he said. I regret that they were necessary. The hearing lasted hours. In the end, the decision shocked many. Elias was not imprisoned. He was reassigned. Effective immediately, Elias Verne was appointed civilian liaison to the Varethi under Salith's authority. Some called it a reward. Others called it a mistake. Elias called it responsibility. After the hearing, Salith found him standing alone near one of the station's observation windows, staring out into the stars. You carry weight now, she said. So do you, Elias replied. She stood beside him. My people look to me. Yours watch me. That scares you? Elias asked. Yes, Salith said honestly, but not as much as failing them. Days passed, then weeks. Negotiations began. Salith spoke for the Varethi, calm, clear, unyielding when needed. She demanded recognition as a sovereign species. The release of all Varethi captives across human space, reparations for abuse. In return, she offered alliance, not conquest, protection. Some human leaders accepted, others delayed. Then came the warning. Long-range sensors detected movement at the edge of the system. Not scavengers this time, something larger, organized, an alien coalition that had been watching. They had seen the battle. They had seen the Varethi revealed, and they wanted them. "They will come," Salith said during an emergency briefing. "For us, or for you, or for both." Iron Mercy was not ready for another war. Salith requested permission to act. "Let my people stand with yours," she said, "not as prisoners, as allies." The decision was made. Joint defense drills began. Humans and Varethi trained side by side, slowly at first. Then with growing confidence. Elias watched it all, pride and fear mixing in his chest. One night he found Salith alone on an outer platform, gazing into space. "You should be resting," he said. "I am," she replied. "This is how I rest." They stood in silence for a while. "You could have left," Elias said finally. "After everything, you could have taken your people and gone." Salith nodded. "Yes." "Why didn't you?" he asked. She turned to him. "Because kindness creates bonds, and bonds create responsibility." She placed a hand over her chest. "You fed me when I was nothing. That is not easily forgotten." Elias felt his throat tighten. The warning came 3 days later. Enemy ships entered the system, not attacking yet. Watching, testing. Iron Mercy's defenses activated. Varethi Guardians took their positions. Salith stood at the forefront, calm and unafraid. "This is where they decide who you are," she said quietly to Elias. "And who we are together," he nodded. "Then let them see." As the enemy fleet advanced, humans and Varethi stood side by side, not bound by chains or fear but by choice. And across the station, one truth became clear. The monster had never been the alien woman. The monster had been hunger. And humanity was finally learning how not to create it. The enemy fleet hovered at the edge of the system, ships glinting coldly against the darkness of space. Sensors on Iron Mercy tracked every movement. The station trembled under the weight of anticipation. It was not yet a battle, but it felt like the calm before a storm the size of a planet. Elias stood at the observation platform, looking out at the distant lights. Salith was beside him, her arms folded, eyes fixed on the horizon. She had grown stronger, taller, and more assured in the weeks since her release. The hollow sadness in her eyes had disappeared, replaced by something that radiated quiet power. "They're waiting," Elias said. Salith nodded. "They expect fear. They expect chaos." "Do you think we can stop them?" Elias asked. She looked at him, eyes steady. "We don't stop them by fear. We stop them by showing them what we are." Elias swallowed. The truth of her words settled over him like a weight. They had seen what fear could do. They had seen what kindness could do, and they had chosen the harder path. The enemy fleet advanced, sleek and silent. Small fighter ships darted out first, testing defenses. Then larger vessels moved into attack positions. Energy weapons flared across the void, striking Iron Mercy's shields. The station shuddered with each hit, but the shields held. Salith moved along the outer deck, energy shimmering around her hands. Elias watched as she guided Varethi Guardians into position. They did not attack recklessly. They positioned themselves strategically, protecting critical systems, reinforcing weak points, lifting debris and fallen panels, and even guiding human soldiers to safety. Elias followed as close as he dared, running alongside Salith and the Guardians. Every time a weapon struck the station, she responded with calm precision. A bridge collapsed near one of the power conduits. Salith lifted the heavy metal effortlessly, placing it aside so humans could pass. A group of young recruits froze in fear. She extended her hand, energy forming a barrier around them. "Move," she commanded gently. "You are safe." Elias realized something remarkable. The so-called monster was not destroying. She was protecting. Every action she took was calculated, careful, and humane. The humans who had feared her were learning that the greatest strength was not in violence, but in restraint and wisdom. The battle escalated. Larger enemy ships fired plasma beams at the station's core. Alarms blared. Humans scrambled, soldiers shouted orders, engineers raced to repair breaches. Salith did not hesitate. She raised her hands and a glowing field expanded outward, absorbing the impact of the beams. The energy rippled through the station, stabilizing failing systems. The shields were reinforced not by technology alone, but by her presence. Elias could barely keep up. He ran through corridors filled with smoke and sparks, helping wherever he could. He watched Salith as she coordinated with the Varethi and the humans. Her voice was calm, soothing, yet commanding. This way, protect the power lines. Move the injured. Do not panic. Trust yourselves. It was a lesson the humans had never expected to learn from a prisoner. Hours passed. The enemy tested every defense, probing for weaknesses. But each time, Salith and the Varethi anticipated the attack, guiding humans to cover, reinforcing walls, redirecting energy. Slowly, the attackers began to falter. Their confidence wavered. They had expected fear. They had expected a monster. Instead, they found a united front, humans and Varethi standing together, unbroken. During a brief lull, Elias found himself beside Salith on one of the upper decks. Sweat ran down his face and his lungs burned, but he felt exhilarated. "They expected a monster," he said, voice raw, "and you became their shield." Salith looked at him, eyes soft but determined. "They called me a monster because they could not understand me. You saw me differently, you fed me. You reminded me what it means to protect instead of destroy. I will not forget that." Elias' heart thudded. "You saved the station." "No," Salith replied gently. "You helped me save it. You showed me that humans can be more than fear. That kindness can be a weapon stronger than any gun." The battle resumed. Enemy ships regrouped, trying a more direct assault. But the humans were ready this time. Varethi and human soldiers moved in unison. Salith led the charge, guiding forces with precise energy shields, strategic blocks, and protective maneuvers. Every time an enemy fighter tried to ram the station, a Varethi guardian intercepted, deflecting it without killing. The humans followed her lead, learning trust and coordination. One of the larger enemy vessels broke formation, aiming directly for the station's core. Alarms screamed. Engineers shouted in panic. Salith raised her hands, the energy field expanding like a storm. The ship struck and the energy absorbed the impact, bending metal without breaking it. Sparks flew, but the station held. Elias ran to her side, astonished. "How are you doing this?" She smiled faintly. "I am at my strongest when I am protecting, when I am not alone. You and your people give me that strength." The enemy began to retreat. Their formations faltered. Confidence crumbled. Without chaos to exploit, they could not strike effectively. Human pilots pushed forward, Varethi assisted, and the retreat turned into a full withdrawal. Finally, silence fell over the station. Alarms still blared in scattered sectors, but the battle was over. Iron Mercy had survived. Elias sank to the floor, exhausted. Salith knelt beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You did not run," she said. "You chose to see me as I am. You chose kindness. That is why we survived." Elias shook his head. "I only did what was right. You did the impossible." She smiled softly, her silver eyes glowing in the dim light. "Impossible is a word humans use when they cannot see the truth. You taught me that truth is worth acting on." Days later, the station began to recover. Repairs were made, systems were restored, and the humans began to understand the Varethi. Former prisoners were given proper care, released from chains, and integrated into station life. Humans who had once feared Salith now worked alongside her, learning, respecting, and trusting her. Elias stood near the observation deck, watching Salith guide a group of young recruits through a training exercise. She laughed softly when one of them stumbled. It was a sound of life, warmth, and reassurance, not fear or threat. He felt a hand on his arm. Salith stood beside him, her presence steady and comforting. "You have changed the course of many lives," she said. "And you saved more than the station," Elias replied. She looked up at him, eyes meeting his. There was something in that gaze, gratitude, respect, and a bond that had grown from the first act of kindness he had offered. Without hesitation, she leaned forward and kissed him, not against a barrier this time, not shy or fearful. Open, deliberate, and full of choice. Elias' breath caught. He wrapped his arms gently around her, feeling the weight of every moment that had brought them here: fear, hope, hunger, trust, and the courage to act. When they parted, she smiled faintly. "A kiss can hold more than feeling. It can carry meaning. You reminded me that humanity can choose what is right, not what is easy." Elias nodded. "And you reminded me that monsters are not always what they seem. Sometimes they are heroes, waiting for someone to see them for what they truly are." Together, they looked out into the stars. The enemy fleet had vanished. Iron Mercy was alive. Humanity had survived not by fear but by courage and compassion. The Varethi and humans had found understanding, respect, and a bond stronger than the boundaries that once separated them. The word monster had lost its meaning. And across the galaxy, whispers began to spread about the alien woman, once called a monster, who was saved by a human's kindness. About the human who chose to trust, to feed, to see. About the moment when fear turned into unity and two species learned the power of compassion. Salith turned to Elias. "The galaxy may never understand us fully," she said, "but they will remember this choice. They will remember humanity's strength not in weapons but in heart." Elias smiled. "And that is enough." The stars stretched endlessly before them. Iron Mercy stood tall, repaired, and alive. Humans and Varethi worked together, side by side. And in the quiet of that moment, a simple truth shone brighter than any star. Sometimes, the smallest act of kindness changes everything. Salith pressed her hand to his again. "You fed me once," she said softly, "and I will never forget it." Elias squeezed her hand. "Nor will I forget the day the monster became our protector." They stood together, watching the galaxy, ready for whatever came next. United, unbroken, and stronger than ever. And in that choice humanity shone.